and this is the Age Group Multisport podcast with me, Richard Conway. This is a platform for age group multisport athletes to showcase their journeys. Welcome along to another episode of the Age Group Multisport podcast. Hope you're all well. So, quick question. How long have you been doing triathlon? Me personally, I've been doing multisport in general for about 12 years, I think, all in all. Where has the time gone? And that seems like quite a long time. How about if you knew somebody who'd been doing it for 36 years? That's right. That's exactly what I said. 36 years. Imagine the transformation you've seen over that period of time in a sport you've been doing for 36 years. Well, that's what we discussed today with our guest, Mick Skivington, who's been doing triathlon for 36 years. He started in 1987. That was his first one. So you can imagine we've got lots to get into in this podcast, and it really was quite incredible to find somebody who's been doing it for that long and is still competitive. It really was fascinating to find out how Mick found out about triathlon and how he got started and what he's been doing all those years. We talk about the major changes that he's seen in that time and obviously what he's been up to recently. So that's all coming up. So after I'd spoke to Mick, I thought, well, when actually was the first triathlon? And apparently it took place in September in 1974 in San Diego, California. And it was a track club that had organised the event that involved running, cycling and swimming. And then the first Ironman wasn't till 4 years later in 1978. So a long history actually of triathlon, if you think about it. Nearly 50 years. Be 50 years next year, which I guess in sporting terms is still a relatively new sport, but fascinating all the same. Finally found out where the European Multisport Championships are going to be held. So it'll be a nice holiday over in Portugal for the WBC athletes, Mrs. C included, who've qualified. Nonetheless, so that'll be a good break, somewhere that we haven't been for a long, long time. Multi-sport events are included are the sprint and standard distance duathlons, cross duathlons, cross triathlons, middle distance triathlon, middle distance aquabike and the aquathlon. And then the European Triathlon Championships, sprint and standard distance, have also been confirmed, and they're going to be taking place in Vichy in France between the 21st and the 22nd of September. So it's nice to have some clarity. People can start preparing and getting accommodation and travelling all sorted out, so that's good. And just on that, I haven't qualified for the duathlon, and it doesn't probably look like I'm going to. There's too many people in front of me to get a roll down place even. So I was turning my mind to try and qualify for the cross duathlon, but the qualifying races are like few and far between. I'd searched out and found a couple, and the first one was Escape to a Fan sprint and standard distance duathlons, which were going to take place last weekend over in Wales. And then at the beginning of the week, Age Group News started putting posts on Instagram stating that the three home nation governing bodies for triathlon, Wales, England and Scotland, have agreed triathlon and multisport events organised by Tough Runner UK and Runner Fan will no longer receive event permits. And this was supported by British Triathlon. So that included the Escape to Fan duathlon taking place on the 25th of November, and it's no longer recognised as the Welsh Championship. There was a failure of the event organisers to meet the terms and conditions and required to issue the permits that they need to run the race. That didn't mean that the race wasn't going to go ahead, it just meant that they weren't sanctioned by those organisations. So it was all a bit of a mess, and I was glad that I hadn't bothered signing up for that race, which left me without a race until I found there was one up at Sherwood Pines in Nottingham. So I thought, oh, well, I'll have a look at that. But before I did, I thought I'd get in touch with the team manager, David Pearson, who's also head of Age Group News, and see if it was a race where we could race and qualify. Unfortunately, it turns out that it didn't meet the criteria because they allowed cyclocross and gravel bikes on the route. So I think it must have been deemed not to be technical enough. So that left me with no races to go for. So yeah, all in all, not a very good outcome for me or the events company who's just gone bust, and all those athletes that will probably never see the money that they've paid to take part in the event that they were going to put on. So yeah, not great. So if anybody does know of any other races that are taking place that potentially could qualify for a cross duathlon, then just let me know. A couple of podcasts I've been listening to, and the first one was from Run Form, hosted by renowned coaches Bobby McGee and Matt Pendola. And in this current episode, they were pretty much talking about the novice runner's playbook, tips, motivation and injury prevention. But I thought, might be some hints and tips even somebody who's been running for a while might pick up. And these guys didn't disappoint. The things I picked up were how much consistency plays a role in running, and for us multisport athletes, the other sports and exercises that we do, and benefits of running in groups for motivation and support, strategies for dealing with injuries, which is quite topical in my my own instance. But yeah, really good podcast. Give it a listen. And episode 33, that is. And the second one I'm going to recommend is that triathlon show, and he was talking about off-season training. Episode 418 basically discusses overall thoughts about off-season training and what kind of training besides easy aerobic training to do during the off-season. Yeah, goes quite in depth in it, and yeah, really worth a listen. Learnt quite a lot there. So there's 2 podcasts for you to have a look at. And the last recommendation is, if you haven't seen it already, to watch the Super League face-to-face YouTube video with Georgia Taylor-Brown. It was quite a hard one to watch, actually. It was very brave of her to come out and give the statement that she'd given, and what she'd been through over the last 7 or 8 years. So yeah, give that one a listen. And just goes to show you can never truly know what people are going through. On the surface, it might be all great and positive, but in the background, yeah, you just never know. So yeah, give that one a listen. And that's about it for now. It's time for the main event. Hope you enjoy Mick's story, and we'll see you on the other side. So, welcome along to AMP. Thank you ever so much for getting in touch and wanting to share your story. I read your email. Fascinating read. There's lots to get into there. So I'm really looking forward to having a chat and find out all about you. Yeah, so if you just want to introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from.
Yeah, my name's Mick Skivington. I'm 67 years old. Should have retired last year, but I still work, but I just work reduced hours. I live in Burton-on-Trent, Staffs, which I've lived there all my life. And yeah, I did my first triathlon in 1987, and I'm still racing now, and I still get the same buzz and excitement and anxiety and nerves. Get that now was like, when I first started. It's weird, really. So,
and what did you do before triathlon growing up as a kid?
I've always done sport because my dad used to run the local judo club. So I've got a brother and 2 sisters. I'm the oldest, and as soon as we were 7, we was all allowed to start judo, because that was the age that you could So from the age of 7, like I did judo, which I did that up until I was about, I think, 15, 16, that sort of age group. I used to play local football, just pub football, Sunday league, Saturday afternoon and Sunday league football. I've always ran anyway. I was reasonably good I was quite good at running at school, and I was in the athletics team. So I've always sort of been involved with running and that. And then I did a bit of boxing for a few years, just with some of my mates. I joined a running club quite a few years ago, South Derbyshire Road Runners, and I did all the, from the local races, from the 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathon, up to marathon, like London Marathon. And then it was just after that that I got into triathlon. I think that seemed to be like the next sort of step, if you like, and back then triathlon was just taking off, sort of thing.
Just going back to your judo, what belt did you get up to?
I think back green, I think, not particular high, because one of the things what my dad, when you used to have your gradings to get your belt, my dad's like always thought it was better to be a lower grading than a higher grading. Even though you probably got the knowledge to be a higher grade. So. But my dad taught judo up until right into his 80s.
Yeah, I saw that in your email. That's incredible.
Yeah, and the thing is, what is really fascinating, I mean, like the club was run completely by volunteers, and they didn't make any money out of it. And I think it was like the membership was something like £5 a year and 50 pence to go on the mat, sort of thing. So it was like a non-profit. But it was just the fact that my dad, and he only packed up in the end because he had dementia, and my sister used to sort of help run it as well. And then my dad had to pack up, but he obviously would have probably been still going longer. So
that's fantastic. Proper grassroots sports, though. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
Doing it because he loved doing it, not because he wanted to make any money out of it.
That's right. Yeah.
Fab. Absolutely brilliant. And I guess, a sport like judo and like boxing as well that you mentioned, it gives you that discipline, doesn't it?
Well, it does, absolutely. But the funny thing is as well, it's about winning. Do you know what I mean? You have competitions, and you don't have a fight, a judo match or a boxing match for fun. You do it to win. So as well, it gives you that a sort of a different sort of mentality, if you like.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, I never thought of it like that, but yeah, you do. Yeah, you don't want to go in there and lose, do you?
No.
Fantastic. Like you said, you started triathlon in 1987. I mean, that's 36 years ago.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
that's incredible. But it must be incredible to see how far it's come. But what was it like back then? When you first of all, how on earth did you come across it? Because it definitely wouldn't have been mainstream, would it?
How I come across it? There was an article in our local paper about one of the locals who I didn't really know at the time. I knew who he was, but he was doing Nice triathlon, and then going back to, he did it in 1983, which I didn't realise it was that long ago. But there was an article saying that Paul Jersey was doing Nice, and I think at the time Nice was something like a 3 or 4K swim, about 120K bike, and I'm not sure about the run, either 20 miles. I don't think it was a full marathon. And I remember reading it in the local Burton Mail, And I was thinking, wow, that'd be brilliant to do something like that. But I mean, I've never swam. I couldn't really swim. You know, I had a bike which I used. You know, it was just an old bike sort of thing. You know, so I'd never cycled or anything. And then I happened to mention when I was working, I mentioned it to one of my friends at work, and he says, "Oh, one of his mates, he did triathlon, and he put me in touch with him, and his name was Alan Sweet, and he'd got a race coming up at Otley, and it was the national championships, and he said, if you want to come along with me, come along." So I went to and watched the race and and that was from there. That's how I got into it.
What distance was that race then, Mick?
I don't know. I think it would have been round about Olympic distance, I think. But one thing what I did remember was the swim was in a river, and they had to walk down to the start, and they had to climb down ladders to get into the river.
Really?
At the time. And I mean, like, they wouldn't have that now. I became friends with Alan when Alan used to go swimming at the local swimming pool. I used to go with him, watch him swim, then I'd like try and mimic it. And I could manage like one length at a time, then I could manage two, and just built it up from that. Yeah. But the technique, swimming's always been my weakest discipline, but yeah, that's how I got into it. And then I just used to go out with Alan training, just got into it like that. He was doing the Rotherham triathlon, and that was my first one. I didn't feel quite ready for it. It was at the end of the year. It was about October time. It was a pool swim, and my plan was for the following year to get in. And I thought, well, actually, I'll do this one at the end of the year. So in my head, I would know where I need to be for when I started the following year. I finished, actually, there was 112. Still got the results. There was 123 people, and I finished 109th out of all that. And one thing what sticks in my mind, I had a Mars bar in my saddle pack on my bike, and halfway it was a 20-mile bike course, and halfway round I stopped and got off my bike and ate my Mars bar, because I thought that would be like my energy, you know.
Yeah.
So and I got lost on the bike as well. I took a wrong turn. So I've come a long way really from the very first round.
So how did it progress then after you'd done your first one the next year?
Yeah, but I think it was just more of a fun thing, you know, than anything. I mean, so that would be 1987. It wasn't until 2006. So you know, that's quite a few years. So all that time in between, I'd just been, you know, rocking up and enjoying it. And then I did the Ripon triathlon in 2006 when I was 50, and I come second in that in my age group. So that was really when it sort of the turning point, if you like, where it went from sort of just rocking up, having a laugh, doing it for fun, to sort of starting thinking about, you know, doing it a bit more serious, like, you know.
Yeah. And between like 87 when you first started to 2006, did you have any clubs or a coach or any training plans that you used?
I've always been self-coached, but on the second year, 1988, my first full year they used to have British Triathlon had a Grand Prix series of like standard distance races all around the country, and it was sponsored by Le Coq, you know, the French. And so my very first standard distance try was at Swindon, and that was in a lake. It was the Swindon try. It was a lake swim. I hadn't got a wetsuit, But then anyway, in them that time there was no open water swim sessions or anything, so you did all your training and all your swimming in the pool, and then you just rocked up on race day and dived in either the lake or the sea or whatever, but we went, me and Alan, we was part of that race. We did quite a few of the races as the series, and one of them was in Bedford. And so again, it's like still back to 1988, and we went to Bedford for the Bedford Triathlon, and we camped overnight, and we met on the campsite next to us. There was a guy from Derby, which is like 10 miles up the road, a guy called John Gibb. And we got chatting to him, and he says, "Oh yeah, I only live up the road then from Derby." And he says, "Oh, there's a triathlon club in Derby." Yeah. And he says, "Oh, you'll have to come over." So pretty much, I'm not sure if it was that year, 1988, or the following year, but pretty much straight away, we both joined like Derby Triathlon Club. So, and I've been a member, well, pretty much all the time, but now I have a lifetime membership now with them, although I am in another club, local club, MVH Triathlon Club. But so I've been with Derby Tri Club from since 1988, 89. It's quite a big club now as well, yeah. The swim sessions, actually, it's quite funny because it was at Derby Moorways Swim Centre, but our swim sessions was in the kids. It was about, I don't know, 3-foot pool, training pool, what the kids used to, and that was the only pool what was available to us. So all our swim training was done in this like little, but it was training, so and like that was the start of sort of club structured training,
Yeah, and I imagine that sort of brought you on quite a lot then. You gain so much knowledge, don't you, from people that been training, and like people have different ideas and concepts, and I guess over the years you've seen things change so much. You say, so 2006, going back to that, what happened in that year?
Well, that was it was just sort of changed my training. And first of all, I'm going back to the age group thing, right back to I first heard of the GB age group, because bearing in mind then there was no, every time you had to get an entry form from somewhere, you had to write off for an entry form. There was no internet entries and that. Write off for an entry form and then fill it in, send a stamped address envelope off with it, But one good thing about it was at the end of the swim sessions at the club, somebody would have a folder with all entry forms in for races. So everybody's there and people are going, "Oh yeah, that looks good. And so you'd enter things as a group, you know what I mean? Whereas I think now, unless a club targets specific races, people tend to just go online and think, "Oh yeah, I'll do that," and enter online, and to a certain extent you can end up doing events and not knowing what other people are doing, sort of thing, Going back to 1992, so one of my friends at the time who I'd met through Derby Tri Club, a guy called Paul Enyon, he received a letter from British Triathlon saying that he qualified for the age group World Championships that year, 1992. I think it was in Canada. So that was the first sort of, I didn't even know they had age group racing or anything like that. And Paul was a few years older than me, and I think at the time he qualified for the 40s, over 40s. And I was thinking, wow, that really inspired me, because, he was just like a mate who I used to go training with. He was a real good swimmer, but I can remember when he first started running, and he was just like just an ordinary runner sort of thing. And I remember thinking when he got this letter saying that he qualified for the age group team, and that really inspired me as well, because I thought, yeah, that's what I want to do. But it wasn't until, I think it was 2006 or that I did my first age group race. But back then, you didn't have to qualify. I can't remember my first couple of races. My first GB race, I think, was 2006, was in Almere for long course triathlon. But I can't remember. There was no qualifying races or anything like that. But I think you just applied, and I don't even know what the criteria was then. I think it might have just been, as long as they've got a few people, off you went, sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to say how your mate who done it back in the day, and he was the first one you'd heard of that had got a qualification. How did it come about?
I think that he'd done one particular race, and British Triathlon must have used that race as because we didn't. We used to do a lot of the races together, and you didn't necessarily know anything about any qualification races. So, and I think it just come out the blue that, because he'd had a good race, obviously he was up there. And because as well, the other thing was you didn't get results from races till about 2 weeks after in the post. As it happened, unfortunately, Paul, he qualified for, it was in Canada that year. And he was out training on his bike, and he got knocked off his bike and killed while he was, training. So there was, so there was the sad side to that story. But it was that what sort of inspired me, and like I say, it took a long time to get into it.
Yeah, we forget about how things were, because we just take them all for granted now, how things back then were so much more complicated to achieve. Like you've just said, you had to send off your form by post, and it's just you totally forget who uses post anymore. It's like you said, it's all done online. You go to the British Wet Dry website and it's all there, isn't it, in black and white? And it's it's just until you speak to somebody who actually was there back in the day, it's like, I never thought of that. It's just, you just don't even think, do you? It's like there'd be no mobile phones. Some people wouldn't even have a telephone still. And, it's just like, it must have been really tough to get qualified. Fascinating. But I mean, that's sad about your friend. And did you try in 2006? Was that the first time that you tried to qualify, or like you said, you didn't qualify? And was that because it was a longer distance? Did you have to qualify for sprints?
I think I know it was the 2006 which was the turning point because of my result at Ripon. I can't really recall why that was my first one. I don't think it mattered that it was the long distance, because the following year as well, I did Rimini, which was standard duathlon. And again, I can recall that there was no qualification for that.
Yeah.
But then I think the first one, what I actually qualified for was at Vancouver in 2008. And that all come about just by chance. Going back to 1994, there was half a dozen of us from Derby Tri. We did, there was an iron distance race, Chasewater in Staffordshire, and it was called The Longest Day. Right. And it was run by Black Country Triathletes, and it was like Ironman distance. And so this is back in 1994, and there was 6 of us from the club from Derby who was thinking of doing it. And bearing in mind, again, Len, there was no sort of training plans on how to train for Ironman. And all it was just a case of just like cramming in miles on the bike and running and just doing as much as you can. And I can remember on about 6 weeks before we actually entered, before the race, we decided we was going to. There was a Utoxeter. They used to have a half marathon there, so we all rocked up early. Did all 6 of us did a 50-mile bike ride, and then did the half marathon. And that was going to be the decider of whether we thought we'd be able to do like the iron distance. And we did. So we all signed up for it. And again, back in 1994, that was like quite a big thing. And we actually had the Derby Telegraph. I don't know how they found out, but the Derby Telegraph wanted to like run a article on it, and they come down to one of our training sessions at Derby, the swim session, and we had photos and interviews and that, and it was like a half-page piece in the paper, and it was sort of like, are these guys crazy or what, sort of thing.
Yeah, because it would have been unheard of, wouldn't it? You know what I mean?
Whereas now, today, it's just another race, so to speak. I know it's a bit more than that, but because lots of people have done Ironman, it's not thought of really anything special compared to what it was like then. You know.
There's Ironmans all over the world now, isn't there? And
yeah.
It's still quite a niche sport, let's be honest, but it's nowhere near what you experienced, I would suggest. But it just fascinates me to see the difference, your experiences to now in everything really, to do with the sport. Yeah. So how did it go then, the Ironman?
It was good. Yeah, we enjoyed it, and it was my first race at that distance. I think I did 11:08, something like that, which I was really pleased with. But it was quite emotional, funnily enough, more than anything. That's one thing what I remember. When you finish, you think, "Wow, can't believe I've done it." You know. So, but that leads on to then in the UK they had another in 2007. They had another iron distance race called the Big Woody. I did that one weekend. The race was on a Saturday. So I did the Ironman on the Saturday, and I'd booked the Monday off work as well, just as an extra recovery day. And I was online and I was looking on the computer there, I'm thinking, I won't mind see if there's any other races coming up. And anyway, I saw the following weekend, there was Northampton Tri, and there was a standard and the sprint, and the sprint was a qualifier. And I thought, I was umming and ahhing whether to do it. Anyway, in the meantime, my brother, because my younger brother, he was into triathlon as he was, and he was an age grouper as well. And he rang me and said, he was doing Northampton Tri on Sunday, the standard, with his mate. And I says, I've just been looking at that. So I thought I'll enter the sprint because just on the back of an Ironman, a standard would be two. And anyway, it was a qualifier for Vancouver the following year in 2008. Well, I don't know if I'd already entered, but we planned to do Ironman Switzerland for 2008. So I thought, well, I won't be able to go to Vancouver anyway because we planned to go for a couple of weeks. But anyway, I thought, well, I'll just register my intent anyway, just in case. So I did the Northampton sprint, and I won my age group. So I'd got a slot for Vancouver the following year. So I didn't know what to do because, like I say, we'd planned to have a 2-week. I was going to drive over to Zurich for the Ironman Switzerland. And then we was just going to have like a bit of an extended break while we was over in Europe. But anyway, in the end, I decided just go for Ironman Switzerland and then I'll go over to Canada as well. We went to Vancouver, me and my wife. But anyway, the funny thing was, it was free. It was in June, and I got a cousin over there. So I met up with my cousin, and they were saying it was the coldest June they've had for 50 years. The swim was in the sea in Vancouver, and it was a bit rough. It was freezing, to be honest to say. But for some reason, so I'm 50, 54 age group, and for some reason, they started our age group, the men 50, 54 was the first age group to start. I don't know why. The following day, when the standard was on, they cancelled the swim because it was too cold and too rough. But we managed to get our swim in. I'm not sure. I've got a feeling they might have, some of the later age groups for the sprint, they might have cancelled that, you know, because of, so this is my first event, I think, that I've qualified for. And bearing in mind that the men 50 are off first, the swim was reasonable. My bike, I felt like I'd had a good bike. And well, I was out on the run and I passed one or two people, I can't remember. And then I'm on the run and somebody in the, one of the spectators shouts, "Oh, well done, you leading male." And I'm thinking, you know what? I couldn't weigh up what, and I think, sure, lead. I couldn't believe it. But but as it happened, I got passed by one of my teammates. There was a sprint finish at the end, and I got passed right on the well, about 7 or 8, 9 seconds, and I come third on that, and that was my first championship medal, and I couldn't believe it. Once I realised I was in the lead on the run, and I just give it everything, and I pretty much collapsed at the finish, and I was in the medical tent for a while they was trying to. I think it was just exhaustion, but I was in there for about 20 minutes, half an hour. Yeah. So that was my first, world championship medal, and it just felt absolutely amazing, you know.
Yeah, so, fabulous story. Yeah, I mean, you left everything out there by the sounds of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So after that, then, after your first taste of that, what happened next?
I think that raised everything a notch then, because you start thinking, well, actually, I can sort of do probably a little bit better than what I think I can. 2008 would be about 52, 53, something like that. People think when you go up an age group, it gets a little bit easier, but it doesn't. In fact, it just gets harder, really. And especially in the older age groups, because although I'm still working, a lot of my competitors have retired and training like full-time pros. So, but anyways, my plan at the time was for when I turned to 55 in the 55 age group, I was really, really going to go for it. And I just had a brilliant winter's training. The end of 2010, beginning of 2011, I was injury free all that time. I actually followed a time trial training because I was doing a bit of time trialing anyway. But I felt that it was really helped the triathlon. You could probably be an average or round about an average time trialist, but if you related that to your triathlon, you'd be a bit above average. Do you know what I mean? So I enjoyed doing that. So that winter 2010, early 2011, I had a fantastic winter, and 2011, it was just absolutely amazing. I had the best season I've ever had. My plan was on 2011, Clumber Park Standard Triathlon, which was national championships, and I come third in that. So that was like the start of it. I do a lot of mountain biking, and in April it was the world champs for the cross triathlon, mountain bike triathlon, and I actually won my age group in that. So I was chuffed with that. Then that same year in June, it was the Dam Buster Standard Triathlon. That was national championships, and I come third in that. So I got bronze in that. But that was also a qualifier for Beijing that year later on. So I'd come third anyway, so I got my qualifying slot for Beijing. In July that year, I did Cowman middle distance triathlon. That was national champs, and I actually won that as well. I got that. And then September, when I went to Beijing, which was the standard distance triathlon world championship, and I come third in that, and I got a bronze. So I got 5 major medals that year, which was amazing. And then off the back of that, the following year, because I'd had a good year and because I'd been world champion, they have the local East Staff Sports Association. They have like awards for people that have been at regional and above representation, and they actually won the East Staff Sports Personality of the Year award.
Fabulous, absolutely amazing.
But one point, which is I think is quite interesting. When I won the world championship, my age group world championship for the mountain bike triathlon, for the cross triathlon, right? It was a sprint finish, and I won by about 4 or 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. It was literally that close. And I beat a Spanish guy. Looking through the results on every discipline, on the swim, bike, and run, the Spanish guy was faster than me on every discipline, and only by a few seconds. But I'd had both my transitions was absolutely spot on, and I took, although I only beat him by about 4 or 5 seconds, I took 46, 47 seconds better than him in transition. So he was faster than me on all disciplines. You know, I'd actually won it on super fast transitions. So,
yeah, well, they say that the transition's the 4th discipline, don't they? So,
but I've never really practiced transitions. I know they say you should. I have done a few sessions, but I always find I've done all the training to have your shoes on your bike, and it's never really worked for me. So I, even though I practice doing it, having my shoes clipped on, I find that for me personally, I'm better off just putting my shoes on in transition rather than faffing about trying to get them on. But of course, every time like you do an open water swim, when you in training, like I'll always sort of take my wetsuit off quick, which I suppose in a way is a bit like, transition training. But I've never really bothered and set out to do specific transition training, even though it is important.
Yeah. Well, your win shows that, doesn't it? How much time you can save over your opponents, even if they beat you in every other discipline. So how did it roll on from there to now then?
2014, I had a problem with my knee. I had a medial meniscus slight tear. Just go back to 2009, I got made redundant. They finished us there and then, but because they have to give you 30 days consultation, they said, we're finishing you now, but we're going to pay you full pay for the next 6 weeks, which is your 30 day, and then come back in 6 weeks and you're made redundant. So I had like 6 weeks of like training, if you like. I didn't necessarily do more, but I think the difference was I was more rested. So that when I did my hard sessions, there were real good sessions. Do you know what I mean? Because I was,
Yeah, it makes a difference, doesn't it?
and I thought I wouldn't mind retiring early and training like full time, because and so that was always at the back of my mind. So then coming back to 2014, I had this little niggle with my knee, and the thing was, if I just went to work and I come home, I didn't do sport or anything, it wouldn't have been a problem, and I would have just let it go, sort of thing. But if I did a run, I'd be all right running, then it'd be aching for a couple of days. So in the end, I thought I'm going to get it done, because I did want to carry on doing sport. And anyway, it took nearly a year to get it. I think it was March, April time when I first had it. And we went right through till after Christmas, going through the different processes with it, and with the doctors who were everything took ages and ages. But the annoying thing was, the first session I went to the physio, when going back in March, April time, when it first come, the physio told me what it was, and she said, we'll give it like so many weeks, because it can heal, but if not, then you'll probably need to have it done. And she actually wrote a letter to my doctor saying what she'd done and what I've got, but I still had to go through the process. So that took nearly a year. So towards the end of the year, no, the beginning of January, I had a couple of consultant appointments cancelled. And then finally, I saw the consultant, I think, January the following year. And he says, oh, yeah, he says, it's only just a slight tear. He says, we can do an arthroscopy. He says, we're in and out. You'll be out, you'll be out of hospital the same day. And he says, you'll need 3 weeks off work, and there'll be no training for 3 weeks, no work for 3 weeks, then back to normal. So, yeah, so I was pleased with that. And I says, so when will you be able to do it? Because he was the doctor, what the physio had recommended to do it. So I was pleased about that. And he says, oh, it could be anything up to 6 months. And he couldn't guarantee that he would do it. Well, I'd been out nearly a year with it anyway. And I'm thinking, I don't want to wait another 6 months. And I says, well, what if I went private on it? And he says, well, I might be able to do it next week for you. That's what I did. It cost me a lot of money. So I went private and I had it done the following week. So, but where I work now, I just work for a little family agricultural engineering. I just make all the steel framework for the barns and the farm sheds. So I said to my boss, I can have my knee done like straight away. Am I all right for having 3 weeks off? And he said, yeah, no problem. So anyway, so I had it done, and like I say, in and out. I was only at the hospital a few hours and that, and I was quite surprised that you walk out and that. And he just said, take it easy for like 3 weeks. And then I had to go back a week or 2 weeks later. But anyway, in the meantime, all my knee had flared up, swelled up and everything. All my calf was swollen. And when I went back on for my post-op, he was like, says, oh, there's a problem there. And basically, it had all got infected. My knee had. So they had to keep me in hospital to drain all my knee out. So they had to go in it again inside to clean it all up. And they kept me in for nearly a week in hospital. Wow. But I could feel that it was getting better each sort of day sort of thing. And then they let me out at the end of the week. And then over the weekend, let me out of hospital on the Friday. Over the weekend, it all flared up again. So I had to go back in again on the Monday. I rung them up and because that was all originally done private. And I rung his secretary up and said, it's all swollen up again. So I had to go back down again on the Monday, and they had to go in my knee again to clean it up. It was still infected. So basically, they'd gone in my knees like 3 times in 3 weeks. And it ended up then I was on crutches because I'd had all that trauma on my knee. And I was off work for 3 months. I was on crutches. I had 3 months of just laying on the sofa, like feeling sorry for myself.
Yeah.
I thought if I did, and I just used to lay on the sofa watching films. I put loads of weight on, and it felt like, depressing to a certain extent, And I thought if I'd packed up work to train full time, it would be awful, But from that was like end of Jan, beginning of February. It took a whole year. It wasn't until Christmas that I was okay to start running again, to start training again,
Yeah.
So that changed all my concept then about I wasn't so bothered about retiring early. So that's why I'm quite happy now. Like I say, I still work now, but I finish like at 3 o'clock. So I've got loads of time. I finish at dinner time Friday. So I get all my training done and working as well. Pay for all the expenses.
Well, this is it, isn't it? It's not cheap. It isn't cheap.
Agegroup racing. So
yeah, it isn't cheap. So what have you done? You got back into it after your traumatic injury there, and what have you done since?
I've been doing a lot. I've still been doing my triathlons. I've been doing doing a lot more other things. I started doing, Rat Race? Some of their events, like but like I did a few of them events with my son, like the Dirty Weekend, which was a 20-mile obstacle thing course. I did the Rat Race Coast to Coast, an adventure challenge with my son. And then just before COVID, I got into paddleboarding. There's a company do paddleboard triathlon. I think I did 3 of them last year. But the beauty of it is, what's really good about it, there's two sets of distances, but then whatever distance you do on the bike, when you enter, you have a choice of doing mountain bike course or road bike course. So it's like ideal for so I sort of got into that as well. But this year it didn't really. I planned to do a couple this year, but it didn't fit in. So last year I went to Bilbao for the cross triathlon and the cross duathlon, which is based just outside Bilbao on the coast, but Bermeo or something. I come 3rd in the cross triathlon, so I got a bronze medal in that. So I was pleased about that.
Yeah, well done.
And I was in Ibiza at the beginning of the year for the cross triathlon and duathlon. But my goal for that was top 10 and top 3 Brit, which I just scraped in on the duathlon. But on the triathlon, I come 6 in that and top Brit, which I was really pleased about, because it was one of the most stacked field what I've ever raced in. All the top guys was for the triathlon. So it was
quite a difficult course as well, was it? I believe.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but it was good.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great story. Just one question. So what's the biggest change you've seen over all these years from when you first started to now? What's the biggest difference?
Technology, really. But especially on like wetsuits and bikes. Back then, it was just like a thick neoprene wetsuit, like sleeveless. A lady called Biddy Ford, who she was involved with British Triathlon, like with the management side, I think. And she had a company called Terrapin Wetsuit. Everything was in like fluorescent colours. All the tri clubs were about. I used to have had fluorescent colours for the tri kit and that, and all the wetsuits. The panels were different colours and that, you know. But it was just a sleeveless wetsuit, and that was it, you know. But it did the job. But the main thing was with bikes, it was just road bikes, basically. My first bike was just a cheap rally road bike. I had a Ribble then, like, which was a decent bike at the time, and just like put tri-bars on, and that was it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then can you remember them big curved tri-bars?
Yeah.
They sort of appeared on the scene. And the other thing was you had to wear a helmet, but all that was available was them like hairnet helmets. You remember what the old track cycling, and then they had these big massive polystyrene things come out. What you could get like a cover in your club colours to put over it and that, you know. Yeah. Whereas now, like the bikes, what you see now is just, you know, completely. Well, it's a different world, isn't it?
It is, yeah. They're just a different level, aren't they? Yeah. The price of them as well, and the kit that's on them, and everything's carbon, and it's just a completely different. But like you say, the whole thing is the world's just evolved so much, hasn't it? When you think about back then and how much we've all moved forward, it's just incredible. And just another quick question: what's your favourite distance then? And
I do like the 70.3, and then I would say after that standard cross tri, you know, mountain bike tri. Well, my last two races, I raced 2 weeks ago. I did the National Duathlon Championship at standard at Grafton.
Oh yeah.
I come third in that, so I got bronze in that, which I was quite pleased about. And then 2 weeks before that, I was out in with Derby Tri Club. There was a load of us out in Mallorca for Challenge Pagera. And I won my age group in that. So like my last two races, I've in 2 races in like the last 4 weeks, and I've been on the podium. So So now I'm looking for the challenge. Do that champion? They have their own championship in Samorin in May. So I'm just in the process of looking at that. Then my winter training will be geared for that 70.3 in May, and then that'll pretty much set me up all throughout the year. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Obviously, I'll still train, but having a good 70.3 winter training will, you know, really set me up for fingers crossed, touch wood, that you don't get injured. That's the
that's the key, isn't it? That's the key to everything. Staying fit, you know, trying to stay fit and getting to the start line fit. Easier said than done. Cool. Well, thank you ever so much for sharing. Have you got anything else to add? Because then we can go straight into the quick fire questions that I always ask at the end.
No, I think that's pretty much covered everything. A long journey in a short time.
Yeah. No, it's been fascinating from my end just to listen. So what's your favourite bit of kit?
My favourite bit of kit, I would say, my mountain bike, probably closely followed by my paddleboard.
Right, yeah. Cool. Yeah, I don't think we've had a paddleboard on before, actually, as a favourite bit of kit. How's your training changed then from like when you, obviously not probably when you first started, but how's it changed over the years? What have you done differently or improved?
I do all my swim training on my own because I can go to the gym when I finish work, and I swim at the gym and the pool's empty. And they have a club session with my MVH tri club, but that's 7:15 on a Saturday morning. And because I'm up at work 5:45 every morning, I like to have a lie-in on a Saturday. So I do, sometimes I'll just go, probably not very often, but I'll just go and just have a swim. but mostly I'll try and do a structured, follow a structured plan. So there's that on the swimming. Biking, I've had a power meter now for a while, so I do a lot of stuff, specific with that. Running, probably just the same, really. I don't do much different with my running because I do part run most Saturdays, so that's a good workout anyway. Like in the winter, we go to the track with the Tri Club, so that covers that. And then I don't, if I go too long, if I go like on my run, then I'll have problems with my knees. So I don't normally go sort of much more than 10 mile anyway.
Yeah.
So, but I would say it's more structured, my training, but I've always been self-coached anyway. So I think sometimes I probably overdo it, but then I think because you've been training that long, and I mean, I train 6 days a week anyway. And I think when you've been training that long anyway, your body sort of gets used to it to a certain extent. And I appreciate you still need your rest and that. But then, like if I've got a training session planned for that night and I come from work and I think, oh, I really don't feel like it, then I won't train, because I've done it in the past. And you think this is a waste of time because you're just going through the motion and then you're prolonging, till you're ready to go do a proper session again,
Yeah. It's all about listening to your body, isn't it? That comes with age and experience, doesn't it?
But the thing is, I've always enjoyed competing and racing. Do you know what I mean? And so I think that's one thing with being self-coached. Like, I did follow an Ironman training program one year because I did Roth with my brother, and we followed a 20-week program. And basically, you didn't do no racing. Do you know what I mean? Whereas now, like I want to do part run on a Saturday, and I want to go out on. We'll do part run and mountain biking this weekend. And I want to do races and that, and I think sometimes because I enjoy racing, I don't want to be focused on one event and miss out on everything else because I just love doing other things,
No, you've got to do what you enjoy as well at the end of the day, haven't you? Otherwise, what's the point?
I've been injury free pretty much this year, and then I think, well, I've done a lot of races this year while I can, sort of thing. And then because I've been in good shape, because, I've not missed any time out for in. So then I think, I think I did at the beginning of the year, I think I did about 4 races in 4 weeks, and that's far too much. But then I think, well, my fitness was there and my head was there. So and then the other thing, but with the age, you think, well, you don't know how long anything can happen. I know that's with anybody, but so I think enjoy it while you can.
I totally understand and totally agree. So what hints and tips have you got for people listening?
Just get out there and do it. Enjoy it. Enjoy it while you can, and don't be afraid to ask for advice. I think one I wouldn't say the worst thing, but you start speaking to a triathlete about triathlon and the world's your oyster sort of thing, because triathletes love talking about triathlon, don't they?
Yeah,
so, don't be afraid to ask questions and, but I think the main thing is if you're thinking about it, give it a go. It don't matter how sort of, a lot of people, it's like in anything, in a race situation, people think, oh, I'm going to be last. But it don't matter. Somebody's going to come last, and people aren't bothered about, who's sort of behind them and that. So just get out there, give it a go and enjoy it. And don't be afraid to ask other people about, training and stuff like that. Yeah.
And finally, what are your short and your long-term goals?
I think I would say long term is pretty simple. Just carry on while I can. Like I just said, you don't know what's around the corner. So while I'm still can do it and enjoy doing it, so that's my long-term goal. I've got short term. I've got Afan, escape to Afan, a mountain bike duathlon in a few weeks.
Okay.
But next year, my main goals are, like I mentioned earlier, I'm doing the Challenge Championship in Slovakia. I'm planning on Australia for the cross duathlon and cross triathlon. But we're just, my son lives in Australia, so we've been out there this year. So we was going next year anyway to Australia. We had originally planned to go. We went in February. We was going to go early February, but when I saw that Townsville was on in August, so my son lives in Adelaide. So what we're planning at the moment, and it's only sort of planning stages, but it's looking likely, is to go to, my son lives in Adelaide, which is still a 4-hour flight away. So to go to Adelaide in August and then spend a week with my son. Then I was going to fly up to Townsville for a week to do the cross tri and cross duathlon, and then back to Adelaide for the final week with my son and my wife and that. So, and then also Malaga, I've qualified for Malaga for the standard tri. So I'm just looking at that at the moment, but I'm trying to sort 3 trips out, and it's it's a bit of a nightmare. Just so
it's a nice nightmare to have, though, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and an expensive one. That's the only trouble really with the. But it's what I enjoy doing, and
that's it. And that's what you spend your money on, and it's what you do.
That's right, yeah.
So. Cool. Well, good luck with it all. Fantastic to meet you and hear your story. It's been really fascinating to listen to you. Yeah, and thanks very much for reaching out again and sharing. Yeah. All right, take care.
Cheers, take care, bye.
There you go. 36 years and still going strong. Still got the taste for it. Still racing abroad and planning for next year. Incredible. And it just goes to show how easy we have it these days with the internet and everything at our fingertips. Not like back in the day when you used to have to get a stamp and an envelope and fill a form in and then send it off. Just one of the many examples of how we've got it so much easier these days, and how popular and how far the sport's come in general. So hope you enjoyed Mick's journey. And that's about it for this episode. Thank you once again for taking your time out and giving us a listen. And if you could just spare the time to get over to Apple Podcast and leave us a review and a rating, we would really appreciate that. Or if you listen on Spotify, you can leave us a rating on their platform also, and even ask questions, I believe, after every episode. So yeah, always open to answering questions. If you would like to get in touch, just drop us an email at agegroupmultisportpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram at amp_1967. We're on Facebook at ampgb. We're on X at agegroupmultisportpodcast. And we are now on YouTube at ampgb. Thanks once again. And don't forget, stay safe, keep training, and love the process.